The obsidian blade pierced my heart beneath the twin moons of Athros, my blood pooling on the ancient stone altar as my half-sister Lysandra stood over me, her eyes gleaming with triumph. "You were always just a placeholder," she whispered, her breath hot against my ear. "The realm needs a true-born daughter to rule, not some half-blood pretender." Death came swiftly, but not before the crushing realization. I had been sacrificed, not for love of realm or duty, but for the jealous ambitions of a woman who saw power as her birthright rather than responsibility. Yet the Phoenix constellation burns eternal, and sometimes, just sometimes, it grants mercy to those who die with justice unfulfilled. I awakened in my tower chamber, dawn light streaming through crystalline windows, the ceremony of binding still 3 days away. My hands, unmarked by the ritual scars of my previous life, trembled as I touched the Phoenix pendant at my throat. The cosmic calendar confirmed my impossible fortune. I had returned to the moment when our father would announce our arranged marriages. As if summoned by fate's cruel timing, Lysandra burst into my chambers, her elaborate golden hair wild with desperation, her violet eyes bright with familiar hunger. "I demand to be bound with Prince Kael," she shrieked, her voice crackling with barely controlled flame magic. "The Dragon Prince belongs with me, not with some shadow-touched nobody." The irony was exquisite. We had both been granted this miracle. But where I saw an opportunity for true justice, she saw merely another chance to seize what she believed the world owed her. In our previous life, the matches had been carefully arranged by our father, High Lord Veilthorn of the Phoenix Realm. Lysandra, with her theatrical beauty and gift for flame-weaving, was bound to Theron Nightwhisper, heir to the Shadow Realm, master of illusion magic, and commander of the continent's most feared armies. I was arranged to bond with Prince Kael Stormbringer, whose dominion over the Dragon Realm was newer but growing, his storm magic raw and unpredictable. Lysandra had boasted endlessly about her superior match. She would be Empress of Shadows, she declared, feared and worshipped across all realms. Her binding ceremony would be legendary. Her reign would eclipse even our father's. But power, true power, must be earned through wisdom and sacrifice, not simply inherited through ceremony. Lysandra approached her bond with Theron like a conquest, not a partnership. She wielded her flame magic recklessly, burning through ancient shadowwood forests for elaborate parties, melting precious shadowglass artifacts to create ostentatious jewelry, treating Theron's ancient bloodline retainers like servants beneath her notice. Within months, the Shadow Court, who valued subtlety, strategy, and respect for the old ways, regarded her as a destructive child playing with forces beyond her comprehension. Theron, a man whose power lay in patience and perception, watched his bondmate's performance with growing revulsion. Their union became a cold war fought through court intrigue and magical duels, each public appearance more strained than the last. Meanwhile, I discovered what hell looked like in a crystal palace floating among storm clouds. Prince Kael was a master of duality. In public, he was the devoted bondmate, gifting me rare storm crystals, praising my phoenix fire, playing the role of passionate lover with breathtaking conviction. Behind closed doors, he revealed his true nature, a magical predator who fed on dominance and fear. He never struck me where it would leave marks. His cruelty was surgical, precise. He bound my magic with his own, leaving me powerless to defend myself. He destroyed my confidence with calculated humiliation, isolated me from allies with manufactured crises, and slowly drained my phoenix fire until I existed as little more than a decorative ember in his storm-racked domain. Lysandra saw only the performance, the jewels, the public displays of affection, and magnificent tower he built for me like a golden cage. Her envy was a consuming flame, burning away reason and compassion. She didn't see the fear in my eyes during court gatherings, didn't notice how my fire flickered weakly in his presence, couldn't recognize the careful choreography of magical abuse. All she saw was what she thought she wanted, the attention, the dramatic romance, the fairy tale that existed only in her fevered imagination. "Are you certain about that choice, Lysandra?" I asked, my voice steady as she ranted about her divine right to Kael's affections. Her eyes blazed with triumphant fire. "His storm magic will surpass even Theron's shadows, you'll see. When his realm dominates the continent, I'll be the one they all bow to. Not you. Never you again." "Never me? Sweet sister, you never understood. I was never your rival. I was your reflection of what could have been." Father initially resisted the change. The Shadow Realm's ancient power and political stability far outweighed the Dragon Realm's volatile strength and uncertain future. But Lysandra had perfected the art of magical tantrums, setting tapestries ablaze and melting courtyard fountains until he capitulated. She spoke of prophetic dreams and visions sent by the Phoenix itself, spinning elaborate fantasies about Kael's inevitable conquest of Theron's realm. Father, who had always been more dazzled by Lysandra's dramatic flames than impressed by my steady, controlled fire, eventually agreed. Mother, my stepmother and Lysandra's true parent, supported anything that made her daughter happy, even if it meant sacrificing her stepdaughter's welfare. So Kael was redirected to Lysandra, and the Shadow Court, who had always appreciated my diplomatic nature and strategic mind, welcomed their new arrangement with me. I accepted with grace and steel-forged determination. This time, I would not be prey. This time, I would be predator. Lysandra's binding ceremony was a masterpiece of magical chaos. She demanded that Kael summon a perpetual aurora for their vows, then shrieked when the magical lightning interfered with her flame displays. The venue? An ancient Dragon Realm stronghold that Kael's ancestors had consecrated over centuries, nearly collapsed when she insisted on improving the architecture with her fire magic, melting support pillars and incinerating irreplaceable tapestries. She arrived 3 hours late, claiming the storm winds had dishonored her natural radiance during the ritual preparations. Her vows were a performance of self-worship. I was born to command both flame and storm, and I will reshape this realm to reflect my glory. Kael smiled, but his eyes held the cold calculation I remembered too well. Even then, watching from the honored guest section beside my new bondmate Baron, I could see the fractures forming in Lysandra's perfect fantasy. The celebration devolved into barely contained magical warfare. Kael, overwhelmed by his bride's demands and his court's mounting horror, drank too much storm wine and flirted openly with visiting fire maidens. Lysandra, in retaliation, challenged several male guests to impromptu magical duels and publicly berated the ancient dragon servants who had served Kael's family for generations. I observed it all with the serene satisfaction of a chess master watching an opponent's inevitable mistakes. Because unlike my previous life, this time I held all the crucial advantages. In my first life, I had been Kael's greatest asset, my Phoenix bloodline, my intimate knowledge of Theron's military strategies, my access to confidential information about inter-realm politics that I had innocently shared with my bondmate. Kael had built his power on magical espionage, realm manipulation, and strategic betrayal, all enabled through my unwitting cooperation. This time, I kept those secrets buried in shadow. More than that, I began to orchestrate his destruction with the same methodical precision he had once used to drain my life force. Anonymous messages reached his rivals about upcoming Dragon Realm initiatives. Traveling merchants found themselves carrying carefully placed intelligence about his illegal storm summoning practices. Ancient spirits whispered to the Realm Council about evidence documenting his violations of the sacred accords. I was a phantom in the magical networks, invisible but omnipresent, weaving a web of consequence from the shadows while maintaining the perfect facade of the devoted bondmate to Theron. As Kael's domain crumbled, his true nature emerged for all to witness. Without me as his magical battery and emotional victim, he redirected his rage toward Lysandra. Their private storms became public disasters. Scrying crystals captured him, draining her flame magic during their arguments, her fire growing dimmer each day as his power waxed. The Dragon Court, who had built their reputation on honor and strength, watched in horror as their prince and his bondmate became a cautionary tale whispered in taverns across the realms. Ancient allies severed their oaths. Tribute stopped flowing. Court mages fled to other realms, taking damaging secrets to rival courts. Lysandra, who had bonded for a crown of flames, found herself ruling over ash and bitter winds. While Lysandra's world burned, mine flourished in shadow and flame. Theron Nightwhisper was everything Kael Stormbringer pretended to be. Genuinely wise, magically accomplished, emotionally mature. He noticed my flinches when magic flared unexpectedly, my careful control when touching flame, my measured responses to displays of power. But instead of exploiting these learned fears, he simply waited. He gave me space to heal, time to trust, room to let my phoenix fire burn bright again. "You're safe in my shadows," he said one evening, after I had instinctively shielded. when he began weaving illusion magic during our studies. Always. And if you need time before we attempt deeper magical bonding, just tell me. We have eternity to learn each other's power. His mother, Lady Morwen of the Night Whisper lineage, was a formidable sorceress who had expanded their realm's influence through 3 centuries of careful diplomacy and strategic marriages. She recognized the steel beneath my careful composure and declared me exactly what our bloodline requires to thrive within days of our betrothal. Our binding ceremony was everything Lysandra's had pretended to be: elegant, meaningful, genuinely powerful. No tantrums, no destruction, no desperate grasping for attention. Just 2 souls promising to weave their magic together in service of something greater than themselves, surrounded by allies who valued substance over spectacle. The Shadow Realm, instead of suffering from my influence, grew stronger. I brought strategic thinking, honed by survival, creativity, forged by necessity, and an understanding of power dynamics, learned through the hardest possible lessons. Theri and I became true partners in magic and governance. We had twin daughters, brilliant, fierce girls who would never know what it meant to dim their inner fire for anyone's comfort. As Cale's power waned and his true nature became undeniable, I began to implement the final phases of my plan. Through Theron's extensive shadow network, I planted whispers in the right ears, guided the right investigators to the right evidence, ensured that every crime would be traced back to its source. But Lysandra's desperation made her dangerous in ways I hadn't anticipated. She began practicing forbidden magic, blood flames that consumed life force, storm-binding rituals that violated the natural order. In her twisted logic, if she couldn't rule through marriage, she would seize power through darker means. She started targeting minor nobles who opposed Cale, leaving them drained and hollow, their magical cores permanently damaged. The Realm Council took notice when Lord Ashworth's daughter fell into an unexplained coma after refusing Cale's advances at a court function. When Lady Silvermoon aged 30 years overnight, following a business dispute with the Dragon Realm, the pattern became undeniable. Theron and I worked carefully to expose their crimes while protecting ourselves. My Phoenix Fire, now fully restored and stronger than ever, could burn through their magical traces. His shadow magic concealed our investigations, allowing us to gather evidence without detection. The turning point came during the Harvest Festival, when all 5 realms gathered to renew the sacred accords. Lysandra, now gaunt and hollow-eyed from practicing forbidden magic, attempted to assassinate me during the ceremonial dance. She struck without warning, forbidden flame magic crackling around her hands as she lunged for my throat, but I was ready. My Phoenix Fire met her corrupted flames in a spectacular display that lit up the night sky, and in that moment of contact, I channeled every ounce of evidence I had gathered directly into her mind. She saw herself as others truly saw her, not the magnificent queen of her fantasies, but a pathetic woman consumed by jealousy and rage. She witnessed every crime, every manipulation, every moment of cruelty reflected back at her through the lens of truth. The shock shattered what remained of her sanity. Cale, sensing his bondmate's defeat, tried to flee the festival grounds. But Theron's shadows had been waiting. The Dragon Prince found himself trapped in an illusion maze, forced to confront manifestations of every person he had ever harmed, every life he had destroyed in his quest for power. When the Realm Guard finally contained them both, Cale was catatonic with terror, while Lysandra could only whisper broken fragments about the flames that judge and the mirror that shows truth. The trial was swift but thorough. Evidence I had carefully gathered over months painted a clear picture of systematic abuse, forbidden magic, and violation of the sacred accords. Witness after witness testified to their crimes, their victims given voice at last. But I had learned something important from my previous life. True victory isn't about destruction. It's about transformation. Instead of demanding the traditional punishment of magical stripping and exile to the void wastes, I propose something different. Let them live with the consequences of their choices, but give them the chance, however slim, for redemption. The council agreed to my proposal. Cale and Lysandra would be bound with suppression crystals that limited their magic to its most basic forms, assigned to work in the Sanctuary of Broken Souls, where they would care for others damaged by dark magic. They would serve under constant supervision, their every action monitored, their freedom earned only through genuine change. Lysandra's first assignment was tending to Lord Ashworth's daughter, helping the young woman recover from the very curse Lysandra herself had cast. The irony was not lost on anyone present. 5 years have passed since the trial. The realms have grown more peaceful, trade has flourished, and the scars of Kael and Lysandra's reign of terror have begun to heal. Lysandra still serves at the sanctuary, her once brilliant flame now a steady, humble light used to help others heal. The healers tell me she has moments of clarity now, times when she genuinely seems to understand the pain she caused. She saved 3 lives this past year, not through grand gestures, but through patient, careful tending. It's not redemption yet, but it's a beginning. Kael works in the gardens, his storm magic reduced to gentle rains that help the healing herbs grow. He speaks little, but the rage that once consumed him has cooled to something resembling regret. Whether either of them will ever fully understand the weight of their crimes remains to be seen. But they live with the consequences of their choices every day. I visit sometimes, not out of love or forgiveness, but to remind myself of the path not taken. They represent what I could have become if I had chosen vengeance over justice, destruction over healing. My daughters are 7 now, their magical talents beginning to manifest. My eldest shows promise with shadow magic like her father, while my youngest conjures phoenix flames that burn with compassion rather than rage. They know the story of their aunt, a cautionary tale about what happens when power becomes more important than purpose. Theron and I rule the Shadow Realm with wisdom earned through suffering and compassion forged in fire. Our bond has deepened each year, 2 souls who found light in darkness and learned that true strength comes not from dominating others, but from lifting them up. On quiet evenings, when the twin moons rise over our castle and my family sleeps peacefully, I sometimes feel Lysandra's presence in the magical currents that flow between the realms. Not the jealous, raging woman who murdered me, but something smaller, sadder, perhaps even a little wiser. The Phoenix constellation still burns overhead, eternal and unchanging. But I understand now that its true power isn't in the dying and rising. It's in the choice to transform the ashes into something better than what came before. I didn't just survive the second chance I was given. I learned to use it to heal wounds I didn't even know existed. And in the end, that was the greatest victory of all.